Mount Etna has surged into life in Sicily, spewing giant orange fountains of lava into the air. Despite being visible from as far away as Catania and Taormina, experts say this latest eruption is not dangerous. The airport at Catania is still open and operating.
Wow! Wow!
1. Ignition and liftoff of the...
SpaceX will attempt to launch 2 unnamed individuals, paying customers said to be very serious about travelling around the moon and back. They've already put down what's described as a significant deposit.
We haven't done this since Apollo 8 back in 1968, and we haven't been back to the moon since 1972, so this is indeed an exciting development.
We don't know how much the week-long journey will cost, but the company says it'll take the amateur space travellers near the moon's surface and then further out to space before looping back to Earth. It's a distance of more than 640,000 kilometres. They'll be on board what's called a Dragon crew capsule, a fully automated spacecraft with no human pilot. Musk says the individuals are fully aware the mission comes with risks. SpaceX has had major accidents, including in September last year when a rocket taking a $200 million satellite from Facebook blew up. An investigation concluded there was a problem with one of its helium tanks.
2, 1.
Recently, though, the company has had a series of successful launches and landings. The United States hasn't sent astronauts to the moon since 1972. This trip, planned for late next year, could be the first of many more to come.
Control the spacecraft.
Musk says if all goes well next year, he hopes to send more people into space once or twice a year.
UFO sightings around the world have reached an all-time high. According to data from the National UFO Reporting Center, UFO sightings experienced a boom in the 1980s. Reported sightings went from less than 5,000 in 1980 to about 10,000 in 1990. But between 1990 and 2000, sightings rose by nearly 30,000. In those 10 years, more than 45,000 sightings were recorded, a record. And it appears the spike in UFO sightings was not an anomaly, but a trend. In an 8-year period from 2002 to 2009, more than 36,000 UFOs were reported. Since then, more than 11,000 more UFOs were reported, with more than 47,000 being cataloged since 2010. Statistician and PhD candidate Sam Montfort brought this information to light. With the collection of data from the reporting center, Montfort found that individuals are far more likely to spot a UFO in the US than anywhere else in the world. He reports that on average, there are 2,500 sightings reported per 10 million people. That's 300 times higher than the global median. Northwestern and northeastern states have filed the most reports citing per capita. Perhaps with 7 new known planets in the universe, we could experience even more close encounters in the future. For Fox News, I'm Rob Demetrius.
Eager to show he will deliver on his campaign promises, Donald Trump is asking for a sharp increase in military spending. That's according to White House officials who are sending out budget proposals to government agencies. The blueprint, which will not be made public until mid-March, will see the Pentagon get more funding, while the Environmental Protection Agency and the State Department will face significant budget cuts. The president recently promised one of the greatest military build-ups in American history. Some experts have questioned the need for a big increase in military spending, given its already large share. US federal spending for 2016 totaled almost $4 trillion. Of this, $584 billion was spent on defense. By contrast, the United States spends about $50 billion on the State Department and foreign assistance every year, and the EPA gets less than $9 billion. Sources say Trump's plan calls for up to a 30% cut in the State Department's budget and slashing $1 billion of the EPA's already small funding. The Pentagon argues, however, that the military's share in federal spending has gone down from a whopping 57% during the Korean War to just over 14% last year. Trump will also need to rein in the US's ballooning deficit, which stood at $587 billion last year. White House sources say the current proposal assumes annual economic growth of 2.4%, short of Trump's target of 4%. The proposals being sent out to departments on Monday are just one stage in a lengthy process. Government agencies can argue for more funding before the final plan gets voted in Congress.
At the White House Monday, China's most senior diplomat met with the new US president after meeting his son-in-law and key advisor, as well as Trump's new national security advisor.
The state councilor came today. They had a meeting with H.R. McMaster, Jared Kushner, and I think some others sat in on the meeting. They had a delegation of 6 people here. After the meeting ended, I believe the state councilor was taken and had an opportunity to say hi to the president before he left. This is an opportunity to begin that conversation and talk to them on shared interests of national security.
Young Jie chose to hold meetings with the new US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson at the State Department early Tuesday. That follows meetings recently with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Europe. Both countries say they want a meeting between the two presidents as soon as possible, but there are many issues where the world's two largest economies have differences. For example, how to manage the DPRK's banned nuclear and missile program following this month's missile launch, and China's objection to the deployment of the THAAD anti-ballistic missile system in South Korea, Trump's executive order to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and his threats to slap punitive tariffs on Chinese goods have deepened uncertainty over US trade policy with China and the rest of the world. US policies on the South China Sea and close-in surveillance of China's coasts are also big question marks right now. A complicating factor, Donald Trump has yet to make key appointments in foreign policy, especially when it comes to Asia and China.
Russia has been against the deployment of THAAD from the very start, and it's also indicated that it would have to strengthen its own defense cover if the deployment goes ahead. Our correspondent in Moscow, Steve Moore, gave us more details.
Well, Russia is mulling this over, I think it's fair to say, at the moment. Of course, Russia had spoken out most recently against this when it was announced and reported here in Moscow that this system could be put into place as soon as June. For Russia, this is basically about more than North Korea, according to them. Because of the X-band radar system, this can see basically into all those neighboring countries, as you've already mentioned, and of those countries, that includes Russia. And Russia is very concerned that this could basically be a problem in terms of regional stability in the Asia-Pacific region. We heard from the Russian Defense Minister, Anatoly Onatov, most recently saying that regional tensions could be ratcheted up as a result of this system being put into place. Russia's basically saying that it will damage regional security interests. And we heard most recently from the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. He basically warned against this being used as a pretext. And by pretext, what I mean is Russia is very keen that countries do not use Pyongyang's actions, the DPRK's, what are regarded as provocative actions by many countries, as a pretext for increasing or militarizing the Korean Peninsula further. What Russia says it's interested in doing is scaling back military presence and scaling back tensions as they stand right now on the Korean Peninsula and in Moscow here. They believe that the decision by Washington to deploy this system in the Republic of Korea basically would go against that. So Russia firmly against the decision to deploy this system, and will be watching very, very closely to see if any more comes out from Moscow over the coming hours and days.
Reuters reports that the UN Security Council is set to vote on Tuesday on a bid by Western powers to ban the supply of helicopters to the Syrian government and to blacklist Syrian military commanders over accusations of toxic gas attacks, despite a pledge by Russia to veto the move. A resolution needs 9 votes in favor and no vetoes by the United States, France, Russia, Britain, or China to be adopted. Russia has vetoed 6 Security Council resolutions on Syria since the conflict started in 2011. China joined Moscow in vetoing 5 resolutions. It was unclear how Beijing planned to vote on Tuesday.
Germany has released a report which reveals that more than 3,500 attacks were carried out on migrants and their homes last year. The report was compiled by the Interior Ministry with information from Germany's 16 states. The crimes include vandalism, arson, bodily harm, and attempted murder. Figures for previous years weren't included in the report, but the ministry spokesperson said 2017 has seen fewer acts of violence against migrants, and this was reason for hope.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for the resumption of an international regime to protect the rights of refugees.
The rights of refugees and migrants are under attack. Human trafficking is on the rise. And with so many people escaping war, the international community must not escape its responsibilities. We must do our utmost to re-establish the integrity of the international refugee protection regime. Our challenge here is not really about sharing the burden, it's about sharing the responsibility.
Guterres made the remarks at the opening session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, Switzerland. He called for more attention to the rights of children across the world, saying more and more children are becoming the victims of wars. Guterres also indirectly attacked U.S. President Donald Trump for promoting the phenomena of populism, racism, xenophobia, and anti-Muslim hatred, which in turn fuel extremism and intolerance. His remarks were later echoed by High Commissioner for Human Rights, who ruled out the U.S. threat to withdraw from the UN Human Rights Council.
Well, as the White House continues to battle leaks and the media, it does appear that some of Trump's critics are resorting to increasingly alternative methods to try to derail his presidency. RT's Emily Sue explains.
When protests, Donald Trump, you stupid clown, and mockery.
Yes, this is real life. This is really happening.
Fail to stop Trump from being the president, it's time to resort to the supernatural.
Jump back, twist the bones and bend the back.
No, really, witches. A Facebook group calling on witches across the U.S. to cast a mass spell against Trump last Friday attracted over 12,000 likes. Celebrities are joining in too, after an instruction manual went viral telling witches what to throw into their cauldron to make the ultimate anti-Trump potion. First thing you need, an unflattering picture of Trump. That's essential. Then, not just any color, but an orange candle stub. But if you can't find a candle, a baby carrot will do. A Tower Tarot card. And you need to end the spell saying this.
You're fired.
All right, witches, let's do this.
To bind Donald J. Trump.
To bind Donald J. Trump.
So that his malignant works. May fail utterly.
May fail utterly. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
But according to some witches, binding Trump to the spell is not enough to stem his wickedness. You gotta include his sorcerers as well. Obviously, Putin and Steve Bannon. But Trump's not an easy man to bewitch. In fact, he's already got his own wizard army of sorts. The Christian nationalism group vowed to use the power of prayer to reverse the witch's spell, which will be cast again and again on every waning crescent moon in the month until Trump's not in office.
Also feeling the heat from anti-Trump protesters are some Republican senators during their meetings with their constituents. An audio recording was leaked of activists preparing to attend a town hall gathering in Louisiana.
If we're not admitted to the hall, all members will gather outside the protest. If our numbers are less than 20, then members will peel off from the outside team to go inside to fill seats.
In the full recording, you can hear how protesters plan step by step how to create a hostile environment in the meetings. Caleb Morpin looks at how some town hall protests seem to be very well coordinated.
Town hall meetings are an American tradition that goes all the way back to New England before the Revolution. They're supposed to be a place for Americans to assemble, ask questions, and engage with elected officials. Lately, they seem to have turned into something else.
I live here. I work here. Save my healthcare. Do your job. Do your job.
Hillary Clinton lost by 20 points in Montana. Donald Trump won in a landslide in the state.
I think some people are clearly upset, but there is a bit of professional protester manufactured base in there.
What? People being organized to disrupt events? What kind of fake news conspiracy theory is that? Oh wait, there's actually a website, townhallproject.com, organizing people to do it. And here's another website, Resist Recess, that serves the same purpose. All kinds of well-connected Democratic Party-linked organizations with million-dollar budgets are organizing their people to go out and disrupt town hall events, kind of like what the Tea Party did during the early years of Obama.
We are America.
Law has cut your taxes.
The more time you spend looking into this seemingly organic outrage at these town hall meetings, the more clear it is that this isn't organic at all. This is orchestrated outrage. There is a script for this stuff.
Oh, so sometimes protests can be organized and scripted. Sure, Freedom Works and all kinds of Republican organizations were spending millions of dollars to disrupt and protest Obama. But these latest liberal disruptions are just a people's uprising from below, according to mainstream media.
There are a number of reasons why they're here. A lot of it has to do with Trump's agenda, but it's also to make a point that they are real voters, real people.
This is definitely a do-it-yourself grassroots movement.
The most massive, incredible, really unorganized.
Unorganized, huh? That's interesting because one of the groups that's been pushing people to protest is called Organizing for America. It's actually one of the only two links on Barack Obama's personal website.
There's a group of people who are incapable of accepting the fact that they lost an election, and they're looking for other ways to overthrow it. And I believe it's all very highly organized, and I think it's done by the same people who helped organize color revolutions overseas.
Yes, the folks at the top of American society are not getting along with each other. Sure, Trump's got many friends and supporters, but also many bitter enemies among America's rich and powerful. It seems like mainstream media doesn't treat all protests and mass movements with equal scrutiny.
The FBI is investigating yet a new outbreak of threats against Jewish targets, including schools with young children. There were threats across several states today. Preschool children were evacuated after a bomb threat at this Jewish community center in Davie, Florida. And it comes after hundreds of gravestones were vandalized at a cemetery in Philadelphia. ABC's Gio Benitez is in Philadelphia tonight.
Tonight, the startling images of children evacuated from a Jewish community center in South Florida after a bomb threat was called in. Similar scenes unfolding in Alabama, Michigan, Rhode Island, and New York. And it doesn't end there. Today, we've seen evacuations of 21 JCCs and day schools in at least a dozen states. 90 threats this year. So far, authorities say the threats aren't substantiated. Today, the White House condemning them.
The president continues to condemn these and any other form of anti-Semitic and hateful acts in the strongest terms.
These new threats come after an estimated 500 headstones were toppled at this Jewish cemetery in Philadelphia over the weekend. Volunteers flocking to the cemetery today. It takes 5 men to lift just one stone.
These are hallowed grounds where individuals were buried here. Their families, their friends, they don't deserve this. They deserve peace, and instead what they got was desecration.
In St. Louis last week, another Jewish cemetery vandalized. As many as 200 headstones toppled over. So far, no arrests.
And Gio Benitez with us live tonight from that cemetery in Philadelphia. And Gio, the FBI now investigating this case as well?
That's right, David. They are indeed investigating those bomb threats. They say they're ready to step in and help local authorities investigate this vandalism here. A bit of good news, though, David. Right now, a local labor union says it will step in to help fix each and every one of these headstones.
Syria returns a shipment of seeds to the Global Seed Vault in Svalbard, Norway. The vault's purpose is to secure food diversity and ensure the survival of endangered crops. It holds donations of species from countries around the world with over 880,000 samples. The Global Seed Vault is meant to be a backup system to local seed vaults. The deposits are not meant to be withdrawn except as a last resort in case of disaster. The bank in the Arctic Circle is built to withstand bombs and natural disasters in order to secure samples up to 100 years after they've been deposited. Syria's local bank is now returning samples it withdrew in 2015 when local supplies were depleted due to civil war. This marked the first time seeds were withdrawn from the global vault. Syria's shipment joins those from countries around the globe that are also making deposits, totaling 50,000 seeds.
I'm standing in front of one of scores of emergency water outlets that have been set up around the Chilean capital where drinking water has been cut. People, as you can see, are standing in line with anything they can get their hands on, any kind of a container at all, because of mudslides that took place in the Andes Mountains region just above the capital and which supplies the city with water. This was contaminated and it's made it impossible for the water board to turn the water back on again until further notice. This following freakish summer rains. It's been one thing after another, from the inferno to a heat wave, unprecedented forest fires, and now the deluge. The worst hit area was literally on fire just a week ago. Now some 19 people are missing and feared dead because of the sudden floods in the mountains, where thousands of tourists were camping out on the last weekend of the summer holidays here.
We can't go to work. People are respecting the queues for now, but people can start getting restless, you know.
Something is always happening to us. Earthquakes, forest fires, which have been ferocious, and now this. But we always face these adversities together.
Authorities say water supplies will slowly be reestablished, but only if the weather cooperates. More rain in the Andes could trigger more mudslides. And if that weren't bad enough, a new heat wave is expected to hit Santiago and last at least until Wednesday, making life even more miserable for residents here who have no running water. People, in fact, are beginning to lose patience and are getting angry and are pointing the finger at the Spanish-run water company, which they say has not invested enough in emergency services.
A new study has found that the 20 million metric tons of fish caught annually around the world for uses other than eating, about 90% are fish that are perfectly good to eat, like sardines, anchovies, and herring. About 27% of ocean fish caught became fish meal or fish oil, which is used to feed farm fish or used in agriculture for purposes such as feeding pigs and chickens. Tim Cashion, the study's lead author, says that historically these fish were eaten for human consumption, but at some point they gained a reputation as being trash. However, Cashion says there could be a better use of these fish. Instead of feeding fish to fish, the fish could feed people, especially those who lack access to high-quality sources of protein.
While we often witness violent natural events above ground, they happen just as much below ground and underwater, even though we rarely get to see them. Back in November, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake hit New Zealand's South Island, causing several fatalities and widespread damage. Now, New Zealand's National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research, or NIWA, is reporting that the November earthquake caused significant damage underwater as well. It notes in a press release, huge mudslides from November's earthquakes have wiped out all organisms living in the seabed of the Kiakora Canyon. Less than 3 months after the November earthquake, NIWA scientists have undertaken 2 research trips to the canyon this year and discovered mudslides have occurred at its head, sending mud and debris into the canyon's central channel. In a survey taken about 10 years ago, scientists reported that the area had one of the highest volumes of organisms living in the mud known anywhere in the world. But based on observations after the earthquake, the Institute notes, while the structure of the canyon itself has remained intact, the mudslides have left no evidence of seabed life. Scientists intend to keep a close eye on the area going forward as they suspect such events happen periodically and are interested in seeing if and when thriving life regenerates there.